What do you say to someone whose world has just shattered? When words feel too small and silence feels too heavy, most of us freeze, afraid to say the wrong thing. But in the darkest moments of loss, it's not about having the perfect response. It's about showing up with compassion, patience, and presence. This isn't a guide to fixing grief. It's an invitation to stand beside it. Let's talk about what truly helps when someone is hurting beyond words. When someone we care about is grieving, our first instinct is often to say something that will ease their pain. We reach for words, for reassurances, for something, anything, that might make the situation feel less heavy. But grief is not a problem to be solved. It's a deeply human experience that doesn't respond to quick fixes or easy answers. In fact, the more we try to wrap it in tidy language, the more we risk creating distance rather than connection. What matters most in those moments isn't what we say, it's simply that we are there. Presence is a powerful force. It communicates safety, support, and love in ways words often can't. Sitting beside someone in silence, showing up without an agenda, listening without interrupting, these are the actions that speak volumes. When someone is grieving, their world has changed completely. The ground beneath them has shifted, and they're searching for a new sense of balance. Offering clichés or advice can feel dismissive even when intentions are good, but when we offer presence, we give them something solid to hold on to. It's not uncommon to feel uncomfortable in the face of grief. Silence makes many people uneasy. There's a pressure to fill the air, to make the atmosphere lighter, to offer hope. But this impulse can lead to statements that, while well-meaning, can come off as minimizing. Phrases like, "they're in a better place," "at least they're no longer suffering," or "everything happens for a reason," can unintentionally invalidate someone's pain. Even worse, they can feel like attempts to shut grief down or move past it too quickly. These moments call for emotional presence, not polished phrases. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, "I'm so sorry, I'm here." There's honesty in those words, there's humanity in them. They acknowledge pain without trying to erase it. They don't attempt to explain or justify the loss. Instead, they simply honor it. That kind of acknowledgement is rare and deeply needed. It offers the grieving person a place to lay their sorrow down without judgment. People who are grieving often feel isolated. The world keeps turning while theirs stands still. Friends and family may not know how to approach them, so they keep their distance. But what the grieving person needs isn't perfection, it's presence. They need to know someone sees their pain, is willing to sit with it, and won't run away from it. You don't have to be eloquent, you don't have to say the right thing, you just have to show up and stay. There's incredible healing power in quiet companionship. Sitting beside someone and saying nothing, offering a tissue, making them a cup of tea, these simple acts of care often carry more weight than any string of words. Because in those gestures, we communicate, "I see you, I respect what you're feeling, I'm not afraid of your pain." That kind of support creates a safe space for grieving hearts to breathe, to speak when they're ready, and to be fully human in their sorrow. Sometimes grief shows up in ways we don't expect, waves of anger, numbness, guilt, or even laughter. These expressions aren't wrong. They're just grief wearing different faces. Being present means not judging how someone processes loss. It means letting them cry without rushing to hand them a tissue so they'll stop. It means allowing silence to stretch longer than feels comfortable. It means saying, "take your time," and meaning it. One of the most loving things you can do is to resist the urge to fix. Instead, lean into the discomfort. Accept that you can't take their pain away. You're not there to erase the loss. You're there to help them carry it. And that kind of support, non-judgmental, consistent, patient, is often the most powerful balm for a grieving heart. People remember how we made them feel in their darkest hours. They may not recall every word we said, but they will remember if we stayed or left. They'll remember if we looked them in the eyes or looked away, if we asked how they were and actually listened to the answer, if we checked in weeks or months later, not just in the immediate aftermath of the loss. Grief doesn't end when the funeral does, and neither should our presence. Being there for someone who is grieving requires courage. It means facing our own fears about pain and mortality. It means being emotionally available when it would be easier to retreat. But when we choose presence over platitudes, we become a steadying force. We become a shelter, not a distraction. And that's something truly sacred. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to supporting grief, but if there is one universal truth, it is this: people need to feel they are not alone. They need someone who is willing to sit in the quiet with them, who isn't afraid to witness their pain without trying to smooth it over. When we offer that kind of presence, we are giving a gift that goes far beyond words. It is a gift that says, "You matter, your pain matters, I'm not leaving." That level of presence requires mindfulness. It asks us to slow down, to let go of our desire to fix or comfort with logic. It calls on our empathy, not our intellect. It demands that we prioritize connection over correctness. This can be hard, especially when we want to feel useful. But usefulness in grief isn't measured by how much we say. It's measured by how deeply we care and how quietly we stay. The truth, is, there are no perfect words for loss, but there is something more enduring than words, a presence that doesn't falter, a kindness that doesn't push, and a silence that doesn't demand. In that stillness, something beautiful happens. Grief is allowed to breathe, and healing begins to whisper. When someone is grieving, the weight they carry is invisible but immense. Grief has a way of pressing down on the soul, distorting time, and dimming the colors of the world. And when people around them attempt to ease the burden with advice, optimism, or logical explanations, the result is often the opposite of what's intended. What they need most in those moments is not a path out of their pain, but someone who will acknowledge that the pain exists, someone who will sit with them in the middle of the storm and say, "This hurts, and I see it." Validation is the cornerstone of emotional support. It is the act of recognizing someone's experience without trying to redirect it or reduce it. When someone is grieving, phrases like, "At least they're no longer suffering," or "You'll feel better soon," might seem comforting on the surface, but they often come across as dismissive. They unintentionally send the message that the person should be looking on the bright side, that their grief has an expiration date, or worse, that their pain is somehow disproportionate or inconvenient. Grief doesn't respond well to comparison or correction, it responds to understanding. There's a deep human need to be seen and heard. Grief is already isolating, it sets people apart from the rhythm of daily life. While the world keeps moving, the grieving person often feels stuck in a space that no longer makes sense. When they reach out, even subtly, what they're asking for is not a solution, but a companion. Someone who can acknowledge, not alleviate, their sorrow. Saying something as simple as, "That sound ton," as incredibly painful, or "I can only imagine how hard this is," can offer more comfort than any attempt to make sense of the loss. The desire to fix comes from a good place. It's rooted in care. Watching someone we love suffer makes us feel helpless, and that discomfort can push us toward action, trying to cheer them up, trying to offer perspective, trying to explain why things happened the way they did. But in the realm of grief, this kind of action often leads to disconnection. The grieving person doesn't need their pain reframed. They need to know it's okay to feel it. They need space to grieve in their own way, on their own timeline, without pressure to move on. True validation sounds like, "You don't have to be okay right now," or "Whatever you're feeling is valid." These are not just words. They're emotional permission slips. They tell the grieving person that their pain makes sense, that they're not overreacting, that their heartache is allowed. It removes the burden of performance and lets them be real. That level of honesty, of emotional permission, is rare in a world that often rushes past sadness in search of resolution. It's important to remember that grief is layered and nonlinear. One moment might bring tears, the next numbness, the next laughter at an old memory, and then guilt for having laughed at all. This emotional roller coaster doesn't need to be explained or sorted out. It needs to be witnessed. Validation means accepting that grief doesn't look the same for everyone. For some, it's quiet. For others, it's loud. For many, it's both at different times. When we validate rather than fix, we allow those we care about to grieve in a way that's authentic to them, not palatable to us. Many people fear saying the wrong thing, so they either avoid the grieving person or default to surface-level comments that bypass the real emotion. But avoidance, even if unintentional, deepens isolation, and surface-level support, while well-meaning, can feel hollow. Validation isn't about having the perfect words, it's about sincerity, saying, I don't cause. Now, what to say, but I'm here with you, is far more meaningful than a polished sentence that tries to simplify something as complex as grief. In validating someone's pain, we communicate that their emotions are safe with us, that we're not going to shut them down, redirect the conversation, or tell them to be strong. We're going to honor their experience as it is. That kind of emotional safety is priceless. It creates a container for the person to grieve fully, to cry without apology, to speak without censoring themselves, to be met with empathy instead of evaluation. Sometimes the best way to validate someone is simply to listen, not just with our ears, but with our whole presence. That means not interrupting, not offering opinions, not rushing to reassure. It means making space for pauses, for emotion, for silence. It means letting them lead the conversation. Listening in this way tells the person, I respect your experience. I trust you to know what you need. I'm not here to control or correct. I'm here to witness. It's also helpful to be mindful of our body language and tone, a softened expression, a gentle nod, eye contact that communicates attentiveness. All of these things speak louder than most words. They help the grieving person feel grounded and accompanied. They create a moment of connection in the middle of their emotional fog, and sometimes those small gestures become the lifeline someone clings to when everything else feels like it's falling apart. Grief is not something to be avoided or erased. It's a natural response to love and loss. When we validate someone's grief, we are, in essence, honoring the love that made that grief possible. We're saying, what you had mattered, what you lost mattered, and how you feel now makes perfect sense. That kind of validation brings dignity to the grieving process. It offers comfort not through explanation, but through empathy. Over time, grief may change shape, it may soften, but that journey is deeply personal and unpredictable. There is no timeline, no checklist, no linear progression. When we validate instead of fix, we allow people to walk that path at their own pace. We give them the gift of not having to perform or pretend, and we remind them through our words and presence that they don't have to carry their sorrow alone. Being there for someone in grief doesn't mean taking away their pain. It means being brave enough to acknowledge it without turning away. It means sitting beside them without answers, holding space without filling it. Validation is not a passive act. It's a powerful offering of compassion, one that says, your feelings are real, your pain is real, and I will not try to make them smaller just to make myself more comfortable. That kind of support leaves a lasting impact long after the tears have dried. Grief does not come with a clock. It does not respond to calendars, deadlines, or the ticking of a watch. When someone is grieving, they are not following a schedule, they're navigating a storm. Each wave of emotion can feel unpredictable and uncontrollable. Yet, in an effort to help, people often try to impose time limits or expectations, asking questions like, are you feeling better now? Or saying things like, it's been a while, you have to move on. These comments, though usually well-intentioned, can be deeply hurtful. They suggest that healing should be complete, neat, and time-bound. But the truth is, grief doesn't work that way. There is no set time frame for grief because the nature of loss is deeply personal. Each relationship is unique. The depth of love, the circumstances of the loss, and the individual's emotional makeup all play a role in how someone mourns. For one person, healing might come gradually with each passing month. For another, the pain may resurface years later in unexpected ways. Anniversaries, holidays, a familiar song, or even a scent can trigger intense waves of sadness long after others assume the grieving has ended. Society tends to be uncomfortable with prolonged pain. It celebrates strength, resilience, and moving on. As a result, people who grieve beyond what's considered a reasonable time frame may feel pressure to hide their feelings. They may begin to doubt themselves or feel ashamed for still struggling. This only compounds their suffering. Instead of receiving ongoing support, they are met with subtle or overt signals to get over it. This response doesn't foster healing, it fosters silence and isolation. What truly helps is patience. Not just passive patience, but active, compassionate patience. The kind that reassures someone they're not broken for still feeling broken. It's about saying, take all the time you need, I'm not going anywhere. This kind of message tells the grieving person that their emotional timeline is valid, that they are not alone, and that their pain does not have to be packaged into a socially acceptable box. It allows them to process their loss without the added pressure of performance. Patience creates emotional safety. It tells someone that they don't have to pretend. They don't have to smile when they're still hurting. They don't have to suppress tears to make others comfortable. And most importantly, they don't have to apologize for their grief. Emotional safety like this becomes a foundation for true healing. Without it, people often suppress their grief, only for it to resurface later, more intensely and unexpectedly. Grief is not a sign of weakness or failure to move on, it's a sign of deep love. When someone continues to grieve months or years after a loss, it doesn't mean they're stuck. It means the connection they had was significant. It means the loss altered something fundamental within them. Asking them to rush through that process is like asking them to rewrite their history or pretend the love wasn't real. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with the absence while still honoring the presence that once was. There's a quiet strength in those who allow themselves to feel deeply even when it's inconvenient for others, and there's a special kind of grace in those who support them without trying to control their emotional journey. Standing beside someone in grief means being willing to let go of expectations. It means understanding that their path will not look like anyone else's, and that's okay. Sometimes grief is loud, sometimes it's silent. Some days a grieving person may feel functional and composed. Other days they might be overwhelmed by emotion out of nowhere. This is not a regression, it's not a failure. It's grief doing what grief does, rising and falling like the tide, shifting form but never fully disappearing. Those who truly care will accept this ebb and flow rather than trying to contain it. One of the greatest gifts you can offer someone in mourning is your consistency. Not just during the first few days or weeks after the loss, but long after the condolences have stopped and the world has moved on. Checking in a month later, remembering the anniversary of the loss, being there during holidays or important dates, these small gestures show that you haven't forgotten, that their grief hasn't expired in your mind. It tells them that their pain still matters, even if time has passed. Avoid placing deadlines on healing. Phrases like, you should be doing better by now, or it's time to let go, can reopen wounds. They shift the focus away from the person's needs and redirect it to the comfort of the speaker. But someone who is grieving does not need to meet anyone's emotional timetable. What they need is room to breathe, space to feel, and the assurance that their grief will not be treated as a problem to be solved. Emotional timelines are different for everyone. Some people process their loss quietly and internally. Others may need to speak about it frequently, revisiting memories or sharing their pain aloud. Some may need professional support or counseling. Some may turn to faith, creativity, or solitude. There is no wrong way to grieve. What's important is not how long the process takes, but whether the person feels supported and understood throughout it. Grief also doesn't come with clear stages that progress in order. People don't move from denial to anger to bargaining to acceptance in a neat sequence. They may revisit these emotions over and over, sometimes all in a single day. Trying to measure their progress based on a checklist will only lead to misunderstanding. Instead, ask how they're feeling without expectations. Listen to their stories without judgment. Offer your presence without a timeline. When someone says, I still miss them, even years later, that isn't something to correct, it's something to honor. It's a reminder that love doesn't vanish with time. It transforms, but it doesn't disappear. Holding space for someone's enduring sorrow is one of the most profound forms of love you can offer. Sometimes the most supportive thing you can say is simply, however long it takes, I'm here. These words are simple, but they carry tremendous weight. They remove the burden of the clock. They say, your grief is allowed, your timing is your own, and I respect your process. Let grief take the time it needs. Let it be messy. Let it revisit. Let it surprise. Healing will come in its own way on its own terms, and those who love without judgment, who remain present without pressure, will be remembered as part of the healing, not as a hurdle to it. There's a unique kind of silence that fills the space when someone is grieving, a silence filled with uncertainty, fear, and the desire to help, but not knowing how. In these moments, many people hold back. They worry that saying the wrong thing might make things worse. They feared that bringing up the loss will deepen the pain. And so they say nothing at all, but while silence may feel safe for the speaker, it can feel like abandonment for the one who is grieving. Grief is not contagious, but avoidance often makes it feel like it is. When someone experiences a profound loss, the world becomes unfamiliar. Everything has changed. And one of the most painful discoveries is realizing that the people you counted on may suddenly become distant, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. The fear of saying the wrong thing, the fear of emotional discomfort, the fear of not knowing how to show up in a space where sadness lives. But compassion requires courage. And supporting someone through grief isn't about having the perfect words. It's about being brave enough to speak from the heart. It's okay not to have the right thing to say. It's okay to be unsure. What matters is showing up with sincerity. Saying, I don't know what to say, but I care, can be more comforting than offering polished phrases that feel empty. Grief doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence. A genuine moment of connection carries more weight than a carefully crafted sentence. People remember who stood by them when everything fell apart, not necessarily what they said, but how they made them feel. Showing up with empathy without trying to control or minimize the pain can create a sense of safety in a world that no longer feels safe. It tells the grieving person that they are not alone, that their sorrow is seen, and that their experience matters. Avoiding someone who is grieving may feel like a way to protect them or yourself, but it often deepens the sense of loss. When the phone stops ringing, when the messages stop coming, when friends become scarce, the loneliness of grief compounds. Many grieving individuals carry not just the weight of their loss, but also the ache of being emotionally abandoned in their most vulnerable moment. They don't expect people to fix it, they just hope someone will acknowledge it. Leading with heart means being willing to enter uncomfortable emotional territory. It means accepting that your words may not be perfect and saying them anyway. It means risking vulnerability so that someone else doesn't have to feel so alone in theirs. You don't have to be a counselor, a philosopher, or a poet. You just have to be human. You have to care enough to stay. Grief is deeply isolating. People often say they feel like they're living in a different world from everyone else, as if they're watching life happen through a glass wall. This sense of separation can be overwhelming, but a single act of kindness, a heartfelt message, or a quiet moment of listening can break that wall, even if only for a moment. It reminds the grieving person that they're still connected to others, still cared for, still seen. There's power in simplicity. I'm here if you need anything. I've been thinking about you. This must be so hard. These short, sincere expressions can offer incredible comfort. They don't try to fix or analyze. They just say, I see you. And sometimes that's all someone needs, to be seen, not as a problem to be solved, but as a person who is hurting. Avoiding hard conversations may protect your own comfort, but leaning in with empathy serves a higher purpose. It sends a message that says, you matter more than my fear of saying the wrong thing. That message builds trust and it builds connection. It tells someone that their grief is not a burden, but a part of their journey that you're willing to witness. It's also important to resist the urge to control or steer the grieving person's emotions. Sometimes people feel the need to cheer them up or distract them. While that might help in certain moments, it's not always what's needed. Grief needs space. It needs to be expressed, not suppressed. Instead of pulling someone out of their sorrow, consider sitting beside them in it. That quiet companionship can be far more healing than forced positivity. Grief doesn't operate on a schedule. It might return in waves, months, or even years after the loss. The person may seem fine one day and overwhelmed the next. Leading with heart means being there for all of it, not just the early days when condolences are expected, but in the long aftermath when everyone else has moved on. A message on a difficult anniversary, a check-in during the holidays, a memory shared unexpectedly. These gestures say, "I haven't forgotten." Sometimes the most helpful thing you can offer is your presence, not your advice, not your solutions, but your consistent care. Being a steady, non-judgmental presence communicates that grief doesn't scare you, that emotional honesty is welcome, and that the grieving person doesn't have to hide or pretend around you. That kind of presence becomes a safe haven. And yes, mistakes may happen. You might say something that comes out wrong. You might misread a situation. That's okay. What matters more than perfection is intention. If your words are offered with genuine love and care, most people will feel that. And if you sense you've stumbled, it's always okay to say, "I'm sorry, that didn't come out right. I just want you to know I care." Owning your missteps with humility strengthens rather than weakens the bond. Grief is raw, unpredictable, and deeply personal. But it's also an invitation to deeper connection if we're brave enough to answer it. When we lead with heart instead of fear, we offer a kind of support that isn't just momentary, it's enduring. We tell the grieving person, through our presence and our words, that they don't have to journey through their sorrow in silence. Even in moments of doubt or discomfort, choosing empathy over avoidance is always the right path. It may feel awkward, it may feel vulnerable, but it also may be the one thing that helps someone breathe a little easier, cry a little freer, and feel a little less alone. And in the landscape of grief, that kind of support is not only meaningful, it's transformational